responsibility.
So in what sense are they, what do you mean when you say responsible?
Like their desires had to do with what happened.
Wait, but I think Godless just meant blameworthy.
Yeah, blameworthy is a tricky. Is that the same? Is those synonyms? Are those synonyms? I don't really think
I'm
they
taking
are.
a charitable view of what she said. I don't think she's saying that it's necessary to have retribution. She's just saying that the agent is blameworthy versus not. I mean, that's what it means to be
I mean,
morally.
the way I understand blameworthiness is basically how responsive to correction you are. So, like, if you're blameworthy, you're going to accept correction. Otherwise, I don't see why you would be blameworthy.
Wait, what?
Except correction. Is this just some pragmatic
Yeah.
bullshit?
No, that's just what I mean. Like for instance, if you wanted to get home in 10 minutes, and you walked instead of drove, I don't know, and you were dissatisfied with the outcome of not getting there in a specific amount of time, someone says, well, look, next time you could do this instead. There's correction, right? There's that's what I think what I would mean by blameworthy.
That seems like a really strange definition of blameworthy, though, Danny. Because, like, what if I come up and punch your mom, right? And then
So
you're
what
like,
if it
don't
doesn't
punch my
occur to
mom.
you?
Don't punch my mom. And I'm like, no, I'm going to punch your mom, right? Wouldn't you still
What
consider
if-
me to blame for punching your mom, even though I'm not going to accept correction?
Yeah, I don't think that if you thought that if there was no regret there or acrasia or anything like that, there's no sense in which we could really call you blameworthy.
That seems really unintuitive to me, but it's whatever. It's your definition.
Yeah, I mean, if we're saying that, look, if you're maybe you mean it this way, but I think this might be trivial. If they're blameworthy, you might be saying something like, "I wish you had not done that," or "I would have taken action to stop you."
So,
Something like that.
So what are they blameworthy for? If it wasn't if all events are caused by antecedent conditions, it's not a
For
physical.
their failure.
Yeah, but it was impossible to not fail.
Right, so look, if I wanted to get home, let's take the example. If I want to get home in 10 minutes and I walk instead of run, okay, and I get there in 12, they're failed, and I can offer criticism and they can self-correct next time and run and not walk, right? And
Okay,
there's a
so
sense
what
in
if
which
next
I think
time running doesn't even occur to them? Are they blameworthy for not doing that for which didn't occur to them?
well, yeah, if they didn't have the knowledge, you could offer that knowledge and they'll modify their behavior. There's correction.
No, like if you do that and they acknowledge, yeah, next time I should run, but next time they're going home, they forget. It doesn't even occur to them to run. They're blameworthy for not choosing that which did not occur to them.
Well, if they're failing, I think that there's a sense in which they're blameworthy, yes.
But you can't choose to do that which doesn't occur to you, right?
Well, some people call that negligence, but I mean, I'm just saying that if all the notion of blameworthiness is tied to failure, if they're failing, right, and they would self-correct, there's a place where I would say there's blame or there's blameworthiness in terms of the failure, maybe.
Right,
It's in terms of the failure.
Right, but they couldn't have done it though, right? Because they can't do what didn't occur to them.
Well, no, they can. I don't see the contradiction there. They could have
Can you
occurred to
choose
them.
to do that which doesn't occur to you?
In one world where it does not occur to you, you could. In another world, it could occur to you.
Right, so this is kind of my point. What are they blameworthy for? They're blameworthy for living in this world and not another.
For the failure, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
if you
blameworthy
want
for
to
the
say
failure, i.e., not living in a
look,
world where they didn't fail.
there's a world in which it didn't occur to them, right? And so they walked instead of run. And there's a world in which it did occur to them and they ran. So there's one world in which they fail, and another world in which they succeed. And I think that there's something there with the failure, such that we could say they're blameworthy for it. They didn't want the failure, but they're responsible because they desired to get there in 10 minutes, not 12. And they would accept correction if you had told them that, look, next time run instead of walk. they would modify their behavior. These are all tied to the concept of blameworthiness. Honestly,
Right.
it's a
So
very
that, but that's
difficult
what you mean by
concept.
blameworthy. So that is what you mean, is that they're blameworthy for not having lived in another world.
Well, there's the notion that Claire taught. If you kill my mom, I would blame you. But I think I'm just pointing I'm pointing to your desire to kill her or punch her or whatever it
Yeah,
was, right?
if
So
killing
there's a
Claire's
notion of
mom is in
responsibility.
accord with your desires and you try to kill Claire's mom and fail, you're blameworthy.
Yeah. I think you're blameworthy. I think the failure is with respect to your desires. You're blameworthy.
Right. So if killing Claire's mom is in accord with my desires and I try and succeed and kill Claire's mom, then I'm praiseworthy.
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
what
Yeah.
a sick fuck. Anyway, so when Danny says you're blameworthy, he just means you ought to have been born in a different world.
You ought to have more specifically, you ought to have considered these facts, or you ought to have done
Right. If you
engaged in
didn't
this
consider
behavior rather
them,
than
if you
another.
didn't consider them in this world, but you ought to have lived in a different world.
Well, ought implies possibility already, Godless, right? It ought implies can, right? So if you ought to have, you could have.
Yeah, you ought to have lived in a different world, or ought to have in this world, because if you didn't do it in this
Look,
world, then
think about what
it
ought
wasn't a
means.
possibility in
Ought
this world.
already. If you ought do X, or if you did X and you ought to have not done X, that just means you could have not done X.
If you lived in a
Right,
different
which means
world.
that, well, there are two worlds that are actualized. I think that it's the agents, in virtue of their desire, that basically renders them blameworthy, because they're the ones that are actualized in one world over another.
I'm talking about a physical possibility.
Sorry, what?
It wasn't physically possible in this world.
Well, then I think that they're not an agent. Right? If it's impossible, if they could have not done otherwise, then they're just not a person or an agent.
Why?
So if you're saying that it's impossible because of natural or physical constraints, then I don't think they're agents or something.
Oh, well, when I think
Because
that we do what we do because of the way that we are, whether we're talking about like a physical property or a belief or desire, and our beliefs and desires are caused by antecedent conditions, whether those are physical or not.
okay, I'm trying to follow you. I don't know why you invoked physical properties. I don't think there's an argument to show that an intention couldn't bring about some kind of behavior.
I agree I agree that it can.
Okay. Wait, can you repeat the objection again? What's the objection? I've kind of lost sight of it.
In this world, our beliefs and our desires and our actions are caused because of the way that we are, but we're not responsible for the way that we are. Therefore, we're not responsible for our beliefs, desires, and actions.
Yeah, I might not desire to have certain desires, but we're talking about when we're talking about responsibility, we're talking about what follows from the desire, whether it be success or failure. Not in terms of, I mean, you could have like second order desires, like I could. So there might be a sense in which, like, look, I wish I had cultivated a desire to read or something. There is a sense in which I'm responsible, but other than that, I don't know what it would mean to say that I'm responsible for something I didn't desire or is not understood into my
No, even
intentional
if you do
states.
desire it and you desire to desire it, I still don't think you're responsible because you desire to desire it because of the way that you already are.
I don't quite follow that. You're saying that because do you think someone could be held responsible for their desires?
No, definitely not.
I think there's cases in which yes, you could desire to desire.
If their desires are caused by the way that they already are, and the way that they are is caused by an infinite
But the way
a
that you
chance.
are, just means desires in some cases, right?
Yeah.
So look, if I
Okay.
have
So then,
like
if your
let's take the
desires
reading
are
example.
caused, look, if you trace your desires, keep tracing them back, if they're always caused by other desires and you keep tracing them back, you're not responsible for your initial desire, right?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, to say that like my fundamental desires are not caused by my other desires or not produced by my other intentional
Right, and if
changes.
your other
I don't-
desires are caused by your fundamental desires for which you're not responsible, and where does the freedom come in?
Well, that I'm not. I don't see how that's relevant.
Answer the question, Danny.
That's no, okay. Well, the thing is that I don't understand a behavior of success or failure without or can you repeat the question for me? I'm sorry.
If your desires
I,
and your intentions are caused by your fundamental desires, which you're not responsible for, then
yeah.
where does the
Therefore, you're
freedom
not.
come in?
Okay, I got it now. I got it now. But that you see, I don't think it follows. Therefore, you're not responsible for the desires, the
I'm
other
asking you,
desires that are
when does the
brought
freedom
about by
come in?
fundamental desires. What the freedom? The freedom comes into the notion of the possibility to do otherwise and the ability to do otherwise.
No,
Right?
you're saying you're
That's where
responsible for
freedom
your
comes in.
desires, right? And if your desires are caused by your fundamental desires initially for which you're not responsible, and then that desire causes the next
You
desire,
see,
causes the
that's where
next
I'm not.
desire. When does
That's
you,
where
the
I'm caught
agent,
up with you.
what?
That's where we disagree. That's our disagreement.
That's what you
Right?
said.
Just because you're no. What I'm saying is that look, if I desire X, in virtue of there being a possibility or failure, is in virtue of that there is freedom. That's what I mean by freedom. Okay,
Repeat that.
failure and success. What?
Repeat that.
1 second. Chain, please mute.
Yeah, it's in virtue of success that we can be successful. Where I posit freedom.
No, but you said
Right?
you're
Not because
responsible for your desires and sometimes.
yeah, there are desires in which I don't desire.
But if
But
you
you're
don't,
saying, but this is what you're saying, Godless. You're saying this in virtue of the fact that there are some desires that are not caused by our desires. Then those whatever comes into fruition is you're not ultimately responsible for or responsible for in any case, and that's where I disagree.
Yeah,
I
Godless,
think
think
we're
of it
Right?
like
not.
a
I think we're
desire to
talking
quit
past each other. I
smoking.
don't understand what you're saying now.
Okay, well, okay. Let me get it. Let me get it. I think I got it. Okay, you're saying X. Let's just say take these variables to be desires. Okay, X desire causes Y, and Y causes Z desire, which causes A or something like that. There's a whole chain, right? But X is the beginning of your desires. You didn't desire X, so how can we attribute any responsibility to the whole causal chain? That's
Yeah.
what you're saying, right? Okay, but I'm saying that I don't understand. It doesn't matter, right? I think that responsibility is kind of narrow with respect to one desire at a time. It doesn't matter what brings about the desire, right? What matters is that you desire in terms of responsibility.
Wait. So in what sense? In what sense are you responsible if you didn't choose the fucking desire? You're responsible for having it, but you didn't choose it.
No, you're not responsible. Look, just because I'm not responsible for X desire, remember, take my example. I'm not responsible for X desire. That's my base fundamental desire or whatever, right? It doesn't mean, therefore, I'm not responsible for desire Y or anything
Even
that
if
comes
desire X
about Y.
caused Y.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter.
That's such fucking bullshit.
Well, you're just pointing. Look, if it's
If
unintuitive to
if
you,
X
I'm
desire
not going to
caused Y
disagree.
desire, then you didn't have the freedom to not desire Y. So how are you fucking responsible?
Because look, it comes down to you don't have an argument for why because your base desires or whatever are non-desired or didn't come about freely. Therefore, your other desires are unfree,
Look, if
or
you're saying
you're
yes,
totally
X
there's no freedom.
desire, if you're saying X desire caused Y desire, and you're not responsible for X desire, but you are responsible for
Look,
Y desire, you weren't. If X caused Y, then you couldn't have done otherwise. You didn't have the
okay,
freedom to
Godless.
choose other than Y.
Godless, I think that what you're just saying here is that you think determinism and freedom are incompatible. You're an incompatibilist. This is your problem, right? I mean,
Wait, do you
it's not
disagree
a
that if X caused Y, then you couldn't have done other than Y?
yeah, I disagree. Right? I think that just because you did Y doesn't mean you could have not done not Y.
Then
Sorry,
what does it mean to say
you
it
could have done
caused
not Y.
it?
Well, what would it? Well, that there's I mean, what would it mean? What you're asking me what a cause is at this point, right?
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by cause. If it could have not been Y, if X
Well,
caused Y, but X could have caused it could have not been Y.
well, X causes Y, but it could have been the case that not Y. That's coherent.
I don't know what it means to say X caused Y then.
Well, you think that because okay, let's take a simple example. There are apples are red. Okay, let's say it. Okay, this particular apple in my hand is red. It been green? Well, sure. Right? Just because we understand that in this world, the redness was caused by some antecedent conditions doesn't mean that there could have been different antecedent conditions such that it would have been green. Right? So just to say that we can explain why the apple is red and not green doesn't mean that therefore it could have not been green.
Yeah, so so it comes back down to you're responsible for not having been born into a different world.
But Danny, right there, you said different antecedent conditions. You didn't say the same antecedent conditions. For your argument to work, you would have to say it was the same antecedent conditions.
No. Look, X causes Y, but you could have gotten not Y.
Right, so
that's what I'm
X is
contesting.
the antecedent conditions, but now you're saying it's not X either. You're saying they're different antecedent conditions.
I mean that's fine, yeah. I mean, what does it have to do with what she's contending? She was saying she doesn't understand if X causes Y, how it could have been. Well, we could have had not Y, and then but she that's what she has a problem with, right? Godless.
Anyway,
We're
so
not
when
saying
Danny
that
says
X
you're
is causing.
responsible, what he means is you're responsible for not having been born into a different world. Anyway, I have another
No,
question. Yes,
no,
that
I
is,
don't think.
yeah,
Look, no. That's not what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Look, I'm saying there could be fundamental desires in which you're not responsible for it, but it doesn't mean therefore, Godless, that none of you don't have any responsibility at all. It does not follow. You don't have an argument for that, and stop pretending that you do.
If X caused Y in this world, and Y is Y, then and you live in this world and X caused Y, then to say you're responsible for Y being the case is to say you're responsible for not being in a world in which Y wasn't the case. Retard.
X is a desire. Is X a desire?
Sure.
What you said? Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm cutting out. She said sure, guys. Right?
Yeah.
X
Yeah.
is a
Yeah. I said
desire,
sure.
right? Okay. Y is the behavior. Okay. Y and
No, you
shows
said
that
what? They're both
there's feeling.
desires.
They're both desires. Okay. But so X was caused by something else that didn't have to do with your agency. Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay. So this is what I'm showing you where I think your error in reasoning. Just because X came about in a non-intentional fashion doesn't mean that you're not responsible for Y. That's what I'm saying. And you don't have an argument to show that that's false.
If X caused Y in this world, and you're saying the person is responsible for X not having caused Y, if X had not caused Y, that would be a different world. So you're saying, I can put it into a fucking syllogism. So you're saying they're responsible for not living in a different world.
No.
If not Y was the case, then it would be a different world.
Well. Wait. You're acting. Wait. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. They are responsible for not actualizing a different world. That's what I want to say. It's not
Yeah,
just
what if we
being
look
in a
back in the
different world.
past at what has already occurred? In this world, Y occurred, and you're saying they're
But
responsible for.
did you understand what I said? Right? There's a difference between being responsible for being in one world or another versus actualizing one world over another. Right?
What if we're looking back
To make a
what if we're looking
proposition.
at what just occurred, has already occurred?
Can you go? I don't understand what your reply. Can you flesh that out for me?
Yeah, X caused Y. The agent wasn't responsible
X
for
is
X.
a desire.
Yeah, and Y is a desire.
Okay,
And they're
who's responsible
responsible
for X?
they're blameworthy for
No,
Y.
they're not responsible for X.
They're
Okay, yeah,
blameworthy
okay.
for Y.
X is a desire. Okay, they're blameworthy for Y. Yes. Okay.
And
X is a
X, which they
desire.
didn't.
Y is the behavior.
Okay, sure. So X, which they're not responsible for, caused Y. And you're saying
Right.
that they're responsible for Y having occurred.
Yes.
And if Y, which is this world, they're responsible for Y in this world. So what you're saying is that they're responsible, they ought to have done not Y. And that would be saying that they ought to have lived in a different world.
No, that would be saying that they ought to have actualized a different world. There's a difference there.
If they had actualized a different world, then they wouldn't be in this world because they'd be in the other fucking world.
Right. So that's what they're failed to do is actualize a different state of affairs in which means their success, which would indicate their success.
Yeah, so
right?
they
Because
failed
look,
to have
when you
lived in
have
a
a
different world.
conversation, look, if you desire to have a conversation with me, you're making a proposition true right now by engaging in behaviors, right? You are doing something, behaving in such a way, right? You're actualizing. You're making a proposition true. And because in virtue of that, are you responsible? It only makes sense to say actualize in terms of a desire, though. When we're talking about
Anyway,
freedom.
if I hypnotize someone but they still have like deliberation, then are they responsible?
Oh, well, okay. That seems like coercion. Coercion. It doesn't seem like they're responsible there. If it's
Well,
the
what if
case
they're
that
still acting in
uh,
accord with
they're-
their desires and deliberating?
well, I wasn't done. Wait, one second, God.
He ran away.
What's going on, guys?
Okay, sorry, I got to my girlfriend's place. Okay. So look, could you repeat your last question to get me back in the?
Yeah, if you hypnotize somebody, so they're like in a extremely suggestive state, and you like suggest their desires, and then they act on these desires, and they still have deliberate. They can still deliberate, but they're hypnotized by me. But they still they're still meeting your conditions with your definition of what it means for free will. Then they're responsible, right?
Okay, so like if I have a fundamental desire to do X, and you hypnotize me in such a way where I no longer have that desire, I'm out of. Then I think that would just be a different person. We're talking about two different agents.
What's an agent?
Look, I'm saying that if let's say I take a person to be understood in terms of their fundamental beliefs.
Yeah, I don't have to change their fundamental beliefs and desires.
Okay, so that means that they still have them if you're hypnotizing them. Okay, so which means that like if I have the fundamental desire to do X, but you by hypnotism cause me to desire something non-fundamental to myself, right? And then let's say you made me desire to like corn. I never liked corn, right? And I go out there and eat corn. I'm praiseworthy for this. There's success there with respect to that desire. Yeah, sure. I think you're responsible for the eating of the corn.
Wait, so if I don't even have to change their desires, or I can just hypnotize them so that they're still in or out of accord with their desires, but they're just in this extreme, like, so extremely susceptible to suggestion. And I suggest to them, and I make it so I suggest to them that they do the opposite of what they desire, and they do that because of the hypnotism. Are they responsible then?
Well, I mean, that's the question, right? Like, do they have free will? And I would actually say, like, and I'm not sure if you've taken like psychedelics before, and you can like please correct me if I'm way off base.
Yeah,
But,
like on psychedelics, you could still deliberate, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Is that you have that social, like, you kind of understanding you don't have outside. Like, you have that, like, it's the ability to read each other, like, kind of that's beyond what you normally can. And it's ability to know
So if I
yourself.
give Danny some fucking shrooms and hypnotize him and suggest that he should torture a puppy and burn it with cigarettes, and he deliberates about that and then burns the puppy with cigarettes, he thinks he's responsible for that.
Wait.
I guess,
So wait, no. 1 second. If I have the desire to get high on shrooms, okay, and then do all this
No,
other
I
stuff,
could give you the shroom. I could force feed you the shrooms.
okay, well then I think that's coercion.
How
I
is
think
it
there's a
coercion?
different.
You're still deliberating and you're still like acting on your intention. You're still intending to do things and acting on them based on your fucking
Well,
desires.
let's let's say I have a desire not to do stupid things, and I understand that taking drugs makes me do stupid things. Okay, and I think that there is a sense in which we would attribute. Okay, so you're saying that I would be, under my view, I would still be responsible if someone force fed me the shrooms. But I think there's a sense in which that's that I would be responsible for the failure. I know in one sense I would not be blameworthy. Now, as to whether I'm committed to do X, but um, you engage in you force me to fail. Okay, you there's an external self thing. There's a force outside of myself that causes me to fail. That's coercion. I think I would be responsible, but not blameworthy. There was, I mean, potentially not blameworthy. I think I would have to know more details.
I thought that you said you thought responsibility and blameworthy were synonymous.
No, if I said that I was wrong. I don't know if they're the same. I
I
think that
thought blameworthy meant to be out of accord with your desires.
blameworthy. I remember. I think I spoke about it. It's understood in terms of failure, but there's like this like self correction that you'd be what do you call open to, right?
Yeah, so how does the
So
self-correction not apply if I hypnotize you and feed you shrooms?
well, I may not possibly know what other um if I don't know how to self correct there, I don't think there's a way in which I could be blameworthy. Maybe someone else could tell me, look, if you weren't around Godless all the time, you would have not been hypnotized. And then, yes, I think I would, if I agreed to that, then I would be blameworthy.
so Danny, if you chug back like 6 shots and then you go and get in your car and you decide to drive and you black out and hit someone, was that blacking out and hitting someone something you're morally responsible for?
I don't know. You're kind of slurring your words, Rise. But let me keep this
No.
between me and God.
Please answer the question. Please answer
Okay.
this question because it's important.
Okay.
It's important.
Okay. Can you?
Because if you made the choice, you made the choice to put yourself in a position where you couldn't make appropriate decisions, where you needed to be able to. So you got drunk and put yourself in the car, and something very bad happened. You're responsible for having put yourself in that car under intoxication. You're responsible if you had been presented with why your mistake last time was wrong, and you understood it, like you were presented with an ability to know and get.
I've
So you
lost
should have
track. Look,
had that.
well, my notion of responsibility is fairly simple. It's more simple than blameworthy and praiseworthy. The notion. It's just the idea that it's to be responsible is to say that you desired it, that you're committed to a particular state of affairs. You're committed to how you want the world to be, right? That's all. Look, so if I desired to get drunk, right, and I got drunk, I'm responsible because I desired it.
I think it's what you have the ability to change. You wouldn't be responsible
Let
for
me move,
doing.
but let me move on to Godless. I think I don't really want to say that responsibility and blameworthiness are the same thing. I think that's different. This idea of self-correction, I think it's tied to blameworthiness, right?
But if you can still deliberate and act in or out of accord with your intentions when you're on shrooms and when you're hypnotized. So I don't see how being hypnotized or under shrooms would make you not blameworthy.
Okay, you're saying, but okay, what am I supposedly blameworthy if I want to do shrooms or if you hypnotize me? Do I want to do shrooms prior to your hypnotism or
I
like
don't
can you?
see how that's even relevant.
Okay, well I'm having a hard time understanding your
My point is,
your.
on your view, being high on shrooms and being hypnotized, as long as you can still act in accord with your desires or out of accord with your desires and deliberate, then that's doesn't get you immune from responsibility or blameworthiness.
Well, I can only really understand that scenario in terms of whether, okay, so if I'm impaired in some kind of way, right, that means that there's a state of affairs in which I don't desire. It's an impairment. But if I don't consider my drunkenness or my high to be an impairment, then yeah, like, I mean, I'm just having a hard time understanding what I'm committed to in that case. It just depends on whether you consider the hypnotism or the drunkenness to be an impairment.
Wait, if you're impaired, so I mean, it seems like what does it mean to be impaired? It seems like we're going to get to cases then where there's no fact of the
No,
matter.
it's a normative. It's not descriptive. It's normative, right? An impairment is something undesirable, or it's not good. Okay,
No,
which
I
means that
desire to be impaired all the time.
well, then you're just you're just saying that by other people's standards is an impairment, and I want that. By my standards, it's not an impairment.
Oh, so if I want to get really drunk and high, and I'm like, and then it doesn't occur to me to run rather than walk because I'm like so drunk, then I'm responsible, right?
Well, if you knew that would make you that way, and you didn't want to be that way, there's a kind of blameworthiness there.
So whether or not, when you're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, whether or not you're responsible for not running not occurring to you is dependent on whether or not you desired to be drunk and high in the first place. What the fuck?
I think so.
What the
I mean,
fuck?
I'm going to
Hey,
take
come
a
on
close
now.
step
Wait,
forward.
what?